Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Kutz. I'm a geographer in the Geography Division of the Census Bureau, and I hope you're ready for 2020 Public Use Microdata Areas program, the PUMA's training, because that's what we're doing today. I hope that's what you're here for. As Barbara said, I have two other colleagues that are with me that have been working on the program. Michael Reedman is going to be picking up after me, and then Mohammed Samamre is going to be doing the technical training for the GUPS program. But we're all going to remain online, and we'll be stopping for questions at a couple of different points in the presentation, and then we'll stick around for some questions afterwards. So I hope we can get all your questions answered at that point. But if you have any remaining questions, we'll have our contact information up there, and we'll be here to support you throughout the program. So if you do have any further questions at any later date, of course, you can reach out and contact us. So let's go ahead and get into this. Hopefully I'm not having, there we go. Okay, so just in terms of our, what we're talking about today, as I said, we're going to have an introduction. So I'm going to get us going with that. Just a quick overview of PUMAs and the 2020 PUMA program, some little differences from 2010 and some other the previous programs, and then we'll have getting started. So how to get your project set up, how to download your information, where to find more information on our website. That's going to be Michael's going to jump in there, and then Mohammed's going to jump in with a live demonstration of how to use GUPS, and we'll get a little more technical. So as we go on, we're going to get a little bit more complex. Just to ease you into the GUPS at the end, but I'll just take a moment to point out that I know there's a lot of folks in the PUMA world that have used GUPS already, so that's great. And we're going to say this at multiple points in the presentation to make sure everybody knows, but if you have used GUPS already and you have GUPS on your computer, make sure you download this new version, because the new version has PUMA specific updates, and so you need to use the new version. So make sure you take the steps to do that. Mohammed is going to walk you through it. We've got documentation on the website to walk you through that, how to do it, but please make sure that you do that. And also, I'll just point out, if you're familiar with GUPS, you'll hopefully be pleased. We've worked out a lot of the bugs and kinks that have come up previously, and we've also really stripped down the PUMA project for GUPS. There's only one level of geography. We try to make it as streamlined, as simple as possible, incorporate as many lessons learned as we could from other GUPS projects. So I hope you'll be pleased with using GUPS for the PUMAs. All right, so just first off, hopefully everybody is familiar with PUMAs, but just a quick overview. PUMAs, the Public Use Microdata Areas. They're non-overlapping statistical geographic areas that partition each state or equivalent entity or state equivalent entity into geographic areas containing no fewer than 100,000 people each, meaning that there are no PUMAs that overlap, right? Everyone is discrete, and they stop at the state boundary. So PUMAs are in one state and one state only. They won't cover a whole state, but they'll be in only one state. So some of our geography, urban areas, for example, may straddle a state line. Some of our other geography will do that. PUMAs are not like that. They nest within state. It's one of the reasons that we reach out to the state data centers, SDCs, as the primary stakeholders for this, the primary participants. They cover the entirety of the United States, Puerto Rico, Guam, and USVI. They're not in CNMI and American Samoa, the other two major territories that we deal with. They don't have PUMAs. They just don't have the population to support them. They're created using whole census tracts and counties or county equivalents, or in the case of, again, Guam and USVI, whole states. Guam and USVI have just enough population to participate. So Guam and USVI, the whole territory, the whole state equivalent, is a PUMA. But in most other cases, you'll see the PUMAs are either whole counties or parts of counties, and entire whole counties are a great way to go for PUMAs. For the 2020 PUMA program, again, SDCs are our primary participant, so I hope we're getting a good turnout. But we'll talk about the other stakeholders that we're hoping that have some input on the program. All right, so just a quick overview. Of course, we don't have 2020 PUMAs yet. That's your job. That's what you're going to be providing to us, the 2020 updates. But we just want to give you a quick overview of the 2010 PUMAs. Hopefully, as everybody's aware, that 100,000 population requirement as a minimum for a PUMA. And again, that's throughout the decade. So make sure you're putting enough population in that PUMA. In areas that you expect to see some decline, make sure you're putting in a little buffer to make sure that you don't fall too far below that threshold. We did have some instances with the 2010 PUMAs, specifically in the Gulf Coast, where due to hurricanes and other disasters, that the population decreased to such an extent that we had to merge some of them. Of course, we can't foresee events like that happening, but just to point out that we will actually take steps if the population does drop significantly. So again, if you are defining an area and it's right on the edge of 100,000, 100,001 persons in there, you may want to add a little bit buffer, particularly if you know that this area is in population decline. All right. But as you can see, as with some of our geography, when we have a population-based definition, you're going to get smaller geography around dense areas, so population-dense areas. So the big cities, you can pretty clearly see a lot of those. And then in the more rural areas, they're going to be larger, just again due to that population density. All right, so just an interesting map to take a look at. So why do we define PUMAs? We define PUMAs for the tabulation and dissemination of decennial census and ACS public use microdata sample data, and for the PUMS estimates, which are valuable to state, local planning offices, other stakeholders for longitudinal research and planning. It's why you folks are here, right, to get to the PUMS data, and primarily because of that flexibility of allowing data users to create the custom tables of statistics, not available through the pre-tab, the summary products that we put out. So you can slice and dice that data a little bit more interesting ways than what we put out there on census.gov. Keep it moving. So who can participate? As I've mentioned several times already, state data centers. Hopefully that's, again, why you're here. This is a state data center training. So the state data center is the official participant and the only interested parties that are able to make a final submission. So there's one submission from each state, and that's from each state data center. That, again, our official participant is the state data centers. However, we do want to keep driving this point home. We are expecting that there will be outreach to other tribal, state, local planning offices, regional planning agencies, transportation agencies, any data user within your state, any data group. I'm sorry, folks, I bumped into the wrong button there. I'm not sure how that happened. But if there are any other interested data users, it's going all the way to the end. I apologize, folks. But again, any data users in your state that you're aware of, that you would like to invite to provide input, that's great. We've even set up GUPs in such a manner that they can do a delineation on their own and then submit it back to the state data center. So the state data center can make reviews of that project and then incorporate it into the main state submission. So we try to build in as much flexibility and as much collaborative tools, as many collaborative tools as we can into GUPs to just make that data transfer easier. But again, we will only be accepting one submission. So we will, if we do get any interested parties, we do sometimes get contacts from agencies and organizations, and we will be directing those to the state data center contacts that we have in order to allow those interested parties to provide their feedback. All right. So we did want to call out the final criteria on our website. We'll take a walk through the website in a minute. But in the final criteria, we do talk about the various population thresholds, relationships with other geographic areas, geographic entities used to define pumas. We've covered this so far. The contiguity and non-contiguity guidelines. And we talk a lot about the place of work and migration, the MIG pumas, place of work and MIG pumas. Not because you're going to be delineating them per se through this program. That's actually entirely done in the statistical offices of the Census Bureau, because a lot of that is based on commuter flow and based on place of work data and the housing surveys that we do. But the way that pumas, the basic pumas, how they're defined, does have downstream impacts on place of work and migration pumas. Primarily because place of work and migration pumas, one of the mandatory criteria for them is that they're whole county units. So if you are defining a puma that is composed of parts of counties, particularly if they're straddling county boundaries, your resulting place of work and migration pumas are going to be the aggregation of those county parts into one larger place of work or migration puma. So it'll end up being a lot larger than you may anticipate. We got a lot of feedback in 2010 and even about the place of work and migration pumas being larger than people anticipated. So we just want to get ahead of this now, because again, you're not defining place of work and migration pumas right now through this program, but how you define those pumas, the 2020 base pumas, I guess we can call them, that is going to have downstream impacts on the place of work and migration pumas. So we put some slides together. We made some graphics in the final criteria and in our documentation, just to give you a heads up. And if you do want to get more information on those, please contact us and we can get you in touch with our statistical offices that do the work on those. In terms of population thresholds, I also wanted to call out, of course, the 100,000. Another issue is we have some pumas that are quite large, and we had, I think, over 20 pumas that had well over 200,000 in population. So those we're going to be reviewing closely. If there's a reason for that, if there's a reason that you want to have those, we can discuss it, but we want to call those out if we can and see if there's a way to break those up to get them back closer to 100,000. Relationships with other geographic areas, we also spend a lot of time in our documentation. Again, not that you necessarily need to make your pumas conform to, say, American Indian areas within your state or urban areas within your state, but we do just want to call those out to make sure that people are taking into account some of these other geographies and the interactions that are going to happen between the statistics for that one geography, again, maybe an American Indian area, maybe a urban area, and the resulting statistics from pumas, just to make sure that you're clear with how all those are going to be produced and the interactions between them. And that's leading into that geographic entities used to define those pumas. A lot of times the counties and census tracts are also not going to conform with these other geographic areas, again, American Indian areas, urban areas, school districts, could be anything. But, being forced to use those counties and tracts is going to, in some way, determine how your pumas interact with those other geographic areas. So again, just something we want everybody to be cognizant of as they're drawing up their pumas, their 2020 puma plans, just to make sure that you're reviewing these other geographies, taking a look at them, and especially with respect to the pumas, maybe draw up your 2020 puma plan, and then turn on some of those other layers and GUPs just to kind of take a final look at that and make sure you're happy with how that is going to be, those geographies and the different statistics are going to be produced for all those different geographies. The contiguity, non-contiguity guidelines, While we would prefer that all pumas are completely contiguous and that they're one single polygon, we do recognize that, and we've heard from a lot of stakeholders, especially in 2010, that there are some situations where you may want to have one census tract on one side of the county and another census tract on the other side of the county, and not have them connect, but still be within the same PUMA. It's something that we'll work through on a case-by-case basis. We don't want to rule it out. So we'll work with you. I would request that you give us a heads up if that's coming, because it's something that we're going to be spending a lot of time reviewing. But again, we're not ruling it out. We just want to make sure that we're understanding on the census side what's going on before we finalize any of those plans.
All right, so thank you, Josh, for providing all that information for us. My name is Michael Reedman. I'm also a geographer in the Geography Division at the U.S. Census Bureau, and now we're going to be going over the steps it takes to, getting started on your PUMA delineation and such. All right, so first thing you want to do, one second, I'm just getting my screen up here. So as you prepare to delineate pumas and submit them to the Census Bureau, you want to be mindful of the items that you see here on the PUMA delineation checklist. These items also occur in the PUMA user guide that we will cover in a second. But basically, the first thing you want to do is download and review the PUMA documentation from the 2020 PUMA website to understand the program and the expectations for participation. After that, you want to develop a plan and communicate. And so who are you communicating with? It would be other interested data users and stakeholders. And with them, you want to share information regarding program materials, software, trainings, and share that with other interested data users. Sorry. And then also you're going to want to establish and maintain contact with other interested data users throughout the program. And additionally, as Josh was just mentioning, if you have any questions or comments along the way, you also want to have communication with us over at the U.S. Census Bureau. If you have any questions, just reach out to us and we can help you. By helping you, we're actually helping us in the long run to get a good delineation submitted. So then lastly, you're going to want to download and install the Geographic Update Partnership software, which is used to complete the delineation. And so this slide here represents the PUMA workflow. This slide is taken from the participant guide. So when you're looking through the participant guide, you'll see it again. But basically, the steps for getting started, you have to download and review the program documents. And in just a moment, we'll take a look at the PUMA website so you can see how that can be done. Next, you would have to develop a plan for delineation. And we just kind of talked about that briefly of you want to consult your stakeholders or the other parties involved and make a plan for who's doing what and ultimately how you'll get to the finish line of completing your delineation and submitting it. Additionally, you'll want to download and install the GUP software. We'll cover that in a moment, but the GUPS or Geographic Update Partnership software, once again, is the software, the free software that you'll be using to complete the delineation. And then when you're ready, you'll open GUPS and start a PUMA project. Then from within GUPS, the steps for creating a PUMA project are delineating the PUMAs and then performing the criteria review and quality checks. Then lastly, we'll go over the steps for submitting, or in the workflow, the next steps are for submitting a PUMA project, and you would export the PUMA project and then submit the PUMA project. So on the 2020 Public Use Microdata Areas program website, you'll be able to find a wealth of resources and information about the 2020 PUMA program, including the final criteria, which Josh spoke about earlier, the summary guide, the participant guide, and that's really going to be the best resource up there. In my opinion, it gives you step-by-step instructions on how to complete your PUMA. It has appendixes and all sorts of information that really will guide you through the delineation process. Additionally, you'll find coding guidelines, naming guidelines, and then frequently asked questions. You can always feel free to ask us questions, but perhaps just take a look at the FAQs first, because that might have the answer to your question in there. And then in addition to the 2020 Public Use Microdata Area Program website, there's also just the PUMA website, which is more for the geography rather than the program itself. And so right now, I'm going to show you how to access these websites. So if you go to Google or whatever your favorite search engine is, you can just type in census PUMA, pretty simple, give it a search. The first link that pops up, if you click on it, and here we go. So this is the website. The first link that you click on is the website for the PUMA geography. But if you scroll down, you'll see the first link is for the 2020 Public Use Microdata Areas program. And this is the link that we want to use. So once again, if you search Census PUMA, click on the first link, that will take you to the PUMA geography overview. But scroll down, click here. This will take you to the website that you want to go to. We also have links for this in this presentation, and we will be posting this presentation at a later time for you guys to download and look at. But so basically now we're here at the right site, 2020 Public Use Microdata's Area Program. We have information, overview of the program, information on participation, information on the participant materials, the schedule, and contact information to get in touch with us. And I do want to mention that we put this website together with PUMA participants in mind. We talk to stakeholders, ask them what they want to see. So this is really a website that is for you guys to access and get the most out of that you can. But something I want to highlight here, if we scroll down, you can either scroll down or click the link. It's all one long page, but I'm going to click on the 2020 PUMA participant material section. And so this is really, in my mind, the gold mine. This is where you're going to find all that useful information that we were just talking about. So for example, the final criteria, the summary guide, this is the jackpot right here, the 2020 PUMA participant guide, the coding guidelines, naming guidelines, and then again, the frequently asked questions. And then you'll see if you scroll down a little bit here, this is some information about the Geographic Update Partnership software. It basically gives you everything you need to know about the GUP software, as well as a link to download the GUP software along with step-by-step instructions. So this is really a great resource that just makes it, that will help assist you in completing your delineations. Additionally, most of you will be using the census web option within the GUP software, and Mohammed will elaborate on that. And basically that option just will automatically download all the files that you need into your GUPS project. But if for whatever reason you're not using the census web option, you'll have to download partnership shapefiles. And if you need to do that, you'll be able to come right here, click on download partnership shapefiles, and you'll be good to go. Additionally, last thing I want to highlight here is there's a section called webinar information. And at the conclusion of this webinar today, as you can see here, we're recording the webinar. So we are going to take the recording of the webinar, add it to this section right here, the webinar information section. It also lists the other dates of our webinars. So this is good to share with other stakeholders, or just have for your own reference.
Michael, let me interrupt for just 1 second here. It's also going to be on our external state data center SharePoint site. It'll be loaded up there under partner resources, and it'll be under right there. You'll see it, PUMA webinar, and that should be hopefully by tomorrow afternoon.
Perfect. So yeah, we'll have multiple avenues to access this information. And then always feel free. This will be, you'll see this again, but always feel free. We can put this into the chat as well. Always feel free to contact us at geo.pumas.census.gov. And I just put that into the chat for you all to see. Now, I'm going to pop back over to the presentation. Just bear with me for a moment here. All right, so we talked about downloading and reviewing the program documents that are stored on the 2020 Public Use Microdata Areas program website and how to access that website. So next, if you remember from the workflow slide, that one of the early steps is developing a plan for delineation. So this really means consider how you're going to conduct the work. Is the work going to be performed by other interested data users or stakeholders, or only by the SDC? Determine the delineation manner that works for the state or the situation. You're going to want to communicate with others. Communicate with others how they want the work to be completed. And then lastly, if others are involved, that just please remember that the SDC must import the work they receive from others into their PUMA project or load it into their project for reference and review. And then just to reiterate a point that Josh made earlier, and we're going to reiterate it a couple times, ultimately, if you have stakeholders working with you on the delineations, ultimately the SDC is the one who's going to make the final submission. So ultimately, it comes back to the SDC to make the final submission. Now, take a second before we start the live demonstration to talk about the Geographic Update Partnership software. So we just saw the 2020 PUMA webpage and the section of that webpage that contains the information about downloading GUPS as well as installing GUPS. Just to reiterate, GUPS, the Geographic Update Partnership software, is a must-use for the 2020 PUMA. GUPS is a self-contained, customized geographic information system software application provided to participants by the Census Bureau for use in completing many other programs, not just PUMA, for example, BAS or PSAP or many of our other geographic partnership programs. So you might be familiar with this, but just like Josh said earlier, this is a revamped version of GUPS, specifically designed for PUMA. So you are, even if you've used GUPS in the past and have it on your computer currently, you're going to want to reinstall the most current version of GUPS to optimize that functionality. Well, yeah, you have to download the newest version in order to use it for the PUMA. And GUPS allows for the sharing of work performed by multiple participants to facilitate a collaborative delineation effort to prepare standardized output files of the delineated PUMAs for submission to the Census Bureau. So as we've mentioned, you're going to want to talk to your stakeholders or other data users or involved parties as you're doing these delineations. And depending on what your plan is, if you want the stakeholders to do part of that delineation, GUPS is set up that just like this last bullet says, that you can take work performed by multiple participants, then aggregate it when it's submitted to the state data center, and then just make one single submission, even though it's been prepared by multiple parties.
All right, just to get back into where we were, and we're gonna start GUPS. So in this demonstration, we're gonna install and opening GUPS application. Map management, we're gonna look at the map management window. We're gonna review the GUPS interface. Gonna look at the toolbar and what tools are available for us to work with PUMA and the PUMA delineation. When we look at the PUMA delineation, we're gonna see that we're gonna have 3 options to delineate the PUMAs. We can create PUMAs from blank. If you are like me and you started already working in your PUMAs, maybe you have downloaded your part of the state, for example, if there is multiple users, and you can use shapefiles, or if you decide to work with tabular equivalency files like a comma delimited file, you can export your files like that and share them with each other before you submit to the census. We're gonna talk about how we're gonna modify or delete a PUMA. We're gonna export a PUMA shapefile or TEF. How we're gonna conduct quality checks and run the criteria review. How we're gonna export a PUMA project to submit to the census or to share with another participant. I'm just gonna start because I have installed GUPS already, but I'm gonna take you just because of the timing so we can save time. If I have installed GUPS and the QGIS, I'm gonna look for QGIS 3.4, and when you expand it, you will see that QGIS Desktop 3.4.4 is installed. And when you open this, it's gonna take a minute to open. And in my case, because I'm working from two screens, I will drag it into our screen and put it back on. But while my QGIS is opening, you need to remember that you need about 4 GB of space to install GUPS, or a RAM of 4 GB minimum. The operating system, you can use Windows 8, 10, Mac OS X via Boot Camp, and we talked a little bit about administrative privileges earlier. When my QGIS opens, I will see this window. It's called Map Management window, and my QGIS will be behind it. Let me move this back and maybe reshare my other screen just to make it easier. Actually, here we go. When this map management window pops up first and you see it, that means that your installation is correct and everything looks good. In this case, I'm going to show you a couple of steps before we really start starting a project. If I had built a project, as I told you, I've been working on a project, I can open recent projects from here, and this is how I come back to my project without having to select which state I've been working on. Or if I received a exported zipped project, and it was exported from GUPS, and it was to share with another participant, I can click the import to project zip file. It's the same way as the other applications that you've been working with. So if Josh worked in half of the state and he wants me to review it, or if I worked in half of the state and I want Josh to review it, I can share my project with him, and he can see all of the layers as I was able to see them and as I was editing them, and he receives all of the changes that I exported for him. I'm just going to open this project here. And as you see, it populates automatically because it was the project that I selected and downloaded the data. So in here, it's going to open the project for California. While that is opening, I just want to remind you with a couple of things. And this is the reason why I started by opening the QGIS. In here, I have two window explorers. If it happens that you need to download the shape files, Michael just showed us through the 2020 PUMA webpage, where we can download the shape files. And when you click on the shape files, you will be able to select the state, and you will be taken to a different window, and you have to select the county. As you know, and I hear this question before, a lot of people think that they have to download all of the counties for the state. You need to remember that this is a state project and you just need the state data. In that case, when you are pumped to the window to select a county, all of what you need to do is to select one county. You don't need to select everything. Again, I'm saying this just so everybody knows. You're just going to download one county, and you're going to have two zipped files, one for the state and one for the county. What I have done here, I created a folder called shape, and I extracted the file that I downloaded for the state data, and I just kept here the state folder. I didn't keep the county folder. When I'm gonna navigate, when I open my QGIS project, I'm gonna navigate to the shape folder to select and open my project. I'm not gonna go all the way to the shape files or go to the 01. I'm gonna go to the shape folder, and GUPS will automatically open this. If you have done this before and you have received data through DVD or CD or downloaded data from the web, you must have done this before, but I just like you to notice this and make sure that you are aware of it. The second thing is, I have here, again, the software that we downloaded earlier from the webpage that Michael told us in the middle of the 2020 webpage. We were able to download the software, and I download. When you download it, you're gonna have this zipped file called gups. You unzip the gups, and you just have to click the setup to install gups. Now, the existing project that I had, it was for the state of California, and I was working on this just so I can test the application and get familiar with the tools. And as you see, we talked about the map management window. The window here, we have the map view, we have the menu bar, we have the standard toolbar, and we have the PUMA toolbar. In here, we have the table of contents or the legend, status bar. And when you first open, and you will see this when we open the real project to work on, when you first open and after you select and the project is open, you will see this. You will be able to see this window. Choose an option for PUMA delineation, and you will be able to see any of those options to start your project from. Create a blank PUMA layer, import a PUMA tabular equivalency file, or import a PUMA shapefile. I'm going to say cancel here. These tools here contain our modify area feature tool. The modify area feature tool is very much like the engine for all of the GUPS applications. The modify area feature tool, you can select a geography, and in this case, it's the public use microdata, and you can select the action. And in the actions here, you have boundary changed or a new entity to create. Depending on the action that you want to do or you want to take, you can keep any of those selections. The blue button here is the select target area. The yellow button is select features, and in here there is multiple options and different ways to select. One of the options that we have added here for the PUMA program is the select features by geography. And what is great about this is to make it easy for everyone. You can select, since for PUMA we either use census tracts or counties for our building blocks for the PUMA boundaries. So if you're planning to select the whole county, you just click on the county option, and you go to the map, and you select anywhere in the map to select the whole tracts within that county. The same thing with the tracts. You will click on the census tracts, and you will click the action of what you want to do. And here it's telling me what you want to do. It's like I didn't select a target, for example. So if I click the blue button to select my target, it will select this whole PUMA. And if I want to change boundary for this PUMA and I want to select the census tract, I will click the census tract here, and I will click anywhere in the map to select my tract to highlight it. And if I want to deselect everything, I will go here and deselect everything. The add, it's like after I selected the tract here, for example, if I want to add it, I will click the add button to add the tract, and this will change the boundary for me by adding this tract into this PUMA here. If I want to delete a PUMA, I will select anywhere on the map or any PUMA that I choose to delete. And by double clicking on it, I will select it, and I click this red button to delete the PUMA. If I want to change attributes or change the PUMA code, we have this change attribute. So I have this PUMA selected, and I can click here, and I can do the change for the PUMA. I can change the name, I can change the code, and there is a criteria built here. If there is something that I type wrong, it will identify those, and it will tell me what I did wrong. Plus, depending on the actions that I'm doing and the layer I'm working with, I have some options for justification if it's needed in here. The other tool that you need is like the show hide legend. In here, it's like you can add a tool, the scale into the map. You can go into load, upload any reference layers. If you need any reference layers by county, you can download them here. You can go to, it's like I didn't mean to skip this, but the geography review tool, it takes you and it opens a different window for you to display, and when you run it, it will display a window that you can select any of the layers, and you will see what kind of changes that you have done into that layer. But this is not necessary, and I don't think you're going to use this a lot. The tool that you're going to use a lot is the PUMA criteria review, and this you have to run before you submit to the census, and you can run it as you're creating your PUMAs. But it is recommended, depending on the actions and the way that you're going to build your PUMAs, it's going to be, we can talk about this in a minute, how you're going to use this more accurately and to make it as easy. But before you export, you need to run the criteria review tool, and you need to make sure that everything has passed the criteria review. You can export to zip, and the export to the zip here, this is where you can select export to census or share with another participant. So if a couple of you working, or you finish your work and you want to share it with somebody to review your work, you can share with another participant, and they will be able to download the whole project and review the whole project the way that it is required, and it builds the project the way that it builds it for you as you see it here. Import a working file is that we just talked about. It's like if you want to add shape files, you want to add more tabular data files, you can add them from here. These tools here, it's like for imagery. If you want to add imagery, you can add the Esri imagery. If you like to go to Tiger Web, you can click the Tiger Web, or you can click here, and if you want to see an area more specific, you can click on the map, and this will take you, after you click on the map, it takes you to any of the websites to either Google or Bing Map to review the area. It gives you two choices. In this case, I just want to tell you, and the reason why I opened this project here, because a lot of people ask about, like, I just worked on this to get familiar with the area, get familiar with my project and the tools, and I messed it up so much, and how I'm going to clean it. To clean it, you need to use this paintbrush. But before we go to the paintbrush, another tool that you're going to need and see is the map management window here as well. The map management window, if you have downloaded your state, this is the state that is going to show. If you choose to open a different project, this is where you can select it if you are in the project already. But hopefully you're not going to need this as much because you're going to work in only one state. But to get back into this tool is very important. It's very important to clean everything that you downloaded and start afresh. And it's really important to see that in here, in my case, the GUPS application is installed in my H drive. In your case, it could be your C drive. And there is a folder GUPS GIS and GUPS data. All of the data that I need, all of the information, everything is downloaded into this GUPS data folder. And everything, when you want to clean a project, it's not as simple as just deleting the project or closing the project or going to any of those folders and cleaning it. The best way to do it, and the better way to do it, is to come here and you can clean by program. So if you have other projects, you can clean by program and you can select those, or you can clean by project and you can select. So if I had multiple other projects here, I will select the project I want to delete. But since most of us are going to be working on only one project, When you select your project, it's going to be highlighted like this with red. And when you click OK, you will see that the application is going to go like crazy and is going to turn everything off. So I'm going to click OK. And this will remove the file folder permanently. And that's exactly what we want here. So if you're testing the files, this is the step that you need to remember. And if you want to know where everything is, this is the link for it. So I'm going to click OK here to close this. Do you want to save current project? I'm going to say discard. And it's going to take a minute, but it's going to close everything for me. Having done that, I'm going to come here and start back again into QGIS, although you can map it into your panel here. But then let's go here again and use QGIS desktop. And because I'm sharing only one screen, we are lucky it opened in the right place. As we said, the map management window is open. This is if everything works correctly. I'm going to come here, and this is how we're going to start. With this version of GUPS, you're going to see that there is 3 programs. You're going to select the program that you're working on, which is the PUMA Public Microdata Areas. And in here for a state, I'm going to select an easy state, which is Alabama. And I'm going to click Open. When I click Open, a second screen is going to show up here. And again, it's almost for all the programs is the same way. It's going to tell me where do you want to go, where is the data is located, where I'm going to locate the data. When you have those privileges in your machine, it will be easier to download the data most of the time or all the time, especially if there is firewalls. But I'm going to use the Census Web. The Census Web option is the best option because you don't need to bother with what we talked about earlier, folder structure, how to download the data, where to put the data, did I download the data correctly or the correct shape files. So this is why Josh started in the beginning talking about like you need to install the GUPS application. You need to install the GUPS application because there is certain shape files that have been updated that we want people to use them, the 2020 shape files for county, for tracks, for everything. And the Census Web option will take you to download this data automatically. You will see the scale bar here and it's going to start downloading. It's going to take a little bit of time. But while that is working, we're going to go here and I'm just going to share with you a couple of things. I know that Mike talked a little bit about the web page and where everything is, but I'm going to take you to the secure web page. By the way, I'm hoping that everybody will receive the announcement for the program, and the announcement for the program has all of the links that you need to get into this page as well to show you where to find the materials. In the Login Secure Web application here, we call it SWIM. This is the application that everybody's going to use to upload the files and send them to bring them to the census. If you don't have an account for the SWIM and you don't have a username and the password, username is your email address and the password that you created after you registered or you created an account, you will receive a token number that is going to be in the top of the email if you requested that. If you lost it or you don't have it, please let me know and email us in the PUMA webpage so you can receive one. In here, you can create, you register your token number, you add your information, and you confirm and you select your security questions. There is one important thing that a lot of people tend to forget, which is if they entered their email in capital or they put it in small letters, and when they come back in here to use it, they might don't remember. And this is where they need to reset their password. And you can either reset your password or contact us. If you cannot even reset your password, contact us and we can help you to register and get an account. While this is finishing, I think it's a good idea to be prepared. And I'm gonna log in here and log in to swim my account. I've been testing this, so I have multiple files here, but most of you, if you're using this for the first time, this would be easy for you to access, and you're not going to have many projects here. But if you worked in other programs, you might be able to see them. But again, you can delete them by selecting any those boxes here, and you can hit delete to delete those projects. But if I want to start uploading a project, I can start from here by start a new upload. And just to go back, I know that this is almost done. All of the installation, the guides that we have available have in details, step by step, everything that you need to do and you need to know. We have the criteria and we have the GUPS guide. Also, at this time, and since we did the testing, we added a quick guide. The quick guide, after you use and you review the actual guide, the quick guide would be as a reference and good hand to document for a quick reference for any questions that you might have. All right, so my project opened here, and as you see, import working file is telling me what you want to do. Create a new blank PUMA layer. If I'm going to go with this option, at this point, please notice here, I didn't go through these layers earlier. When the project opens, you have the tracks, county, the 2010 pumas. You have place, CDPs, any American Indian areas in your state. And it will create puma faces, all MCDs, and any changes that I'm working on. It's going to start registering. At this point, both the changes is going to be empty. Since a lot of you might, it's like some of you might start fresh and they want to build all of the pumas, and that's fine from the beginning, and because there is plenty of changes maybe, you can start with creating new blank puma layers. And I'm going to click OK here because I'm going to start with a blank just for a reference. As soon as I created that, as you see here, the PUMA current layer has been added. This is an empty shape file that I'm going to start working from, and I'm going to start adding pumas to. It will be very handy to add my PUMA from 2010, if I like to do that, and the county layer. And this will give me the reference layers that I need at this point. You always can use the place boundaries if you need to, and you will see this as you're zooming in, or any of the other layers. But for the purpose of this exercise, and just to make it easy for everybody, I'm just gonna start from the northwest corner here. And there is a good reason. I don't know if Josh is available, but there is a good reason why I'm starting from here. Josh, you're here?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So I'm starting from here, and please, Josh, you can confirm. Most of our pumas, if you look here, the existing pumas from 2010, the code number starts with 00100, and it moves on into like 00600. So the 200 will be somewhere here, 300. There is a 200 probably in here. And it goes on. So it goes from west to east, the numbering. This is one thing to remember, and I think Josh touched on that for a little bit about the coding and the criteria for coding and the naming. Yeah. And it goes. Yes,
I don't think I did, Mohammed, but I would just refer everybody to our name and coding guidelines, which is on the website that Michael pointed out earlier, and we go really into depth. Probably more depth than we want to get into right here about, suggestions for how to do your numbering, and some of the kind of mandatory numbering that we're gonna look for and review once we get your programs back in. We structured the codes and have a scheme such that just by looking at the code, you can determine whether it's a whole county PUMA or whether it's partial county PUMA, whether it's made of, and then just how to number it through the state. So I would just direct everybody to that. Take a good look at that. Reach out to us if you have any further questions about it. But thanks for bringing it up, Mohammed.
I appreciate this. Thank you. So I'm going to click the Modify Area Feature tool now to activate. And I'm going to put it in the side so it's not in the middle of my way while I'm working. And as you see, the Modify Area Feature tool is empty because I didn't create any tracks, any PUMAs yet. And I'm creating a new PUMA. So in the action here, I'm going to create a new entity. And the first thing I'm going to do is I can do it by selecting features. But again, I introduced you a little bit earlier for the select features by geography. And I feel like this is going to be very handy for all of you. So I'm going to click onto the county and I'm going to just draw a box between those two counties. And I'm going to hold the shift key and I'm going to click in this county as well. My selection would have been easier if my box dragged it and selected all three of these counties. If I was going to go ahead and follow the 2020, I would have selected those by selecting census tracts. And because I choose to use the 2010 boundaries and maintain them, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to click into this Add Entity. The Add Entity is going to create the new entity for me. And as you see, there is built-in criteria. And this is one of the criteria that we talked about, maybe or not, about the 10,000 population, the tracks that outside, and it's not a whole county that have. But since I'm following the 2010, GUPS will allow me to add a justification for this and let it go. Or I can choose to remove them. So if I say no, for example, it's going to unselect everything for me. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to select all three of these. And I can select this and GUPS is going to give me 00100. And I can go and add test one, for example, for the name, or I can copy the name from here and I can say, okay. So this is my first PUMA, and as you see, it's listed here under the info with the new number and the new record. If I choose to change the boundary, and now I change my mind because my boss told me, no, we're going to maintain those for data comparison. I can, by selecting this PUMA, I can change boundary, and I can go here. I'm going to just use the select feature, and I can draw a polygon to select all three of these. And by clicking the add, I'm going to say yes, because we talked about this. And this way, I just change the boundary for my PUMA. Let's try to do another one. And we select the other options after this one. So I'm going to select add a new entity. I'm going to go here and select my favorite tool, county. And I'm going to draw a polygon around here. And as soon as I did that, I'm going to click add. And in this case, this one says 600, so I'm going to try to use the 600. You need to remember, and this is where you might need a little bit of work by following the codes. GUPS will add the most available or the next available number. So it selected 00100 for the first one. Now it's selecting 00101, but that's not what I want. So I might need to create like a 200 or a 600, maintain the 600. That's what I'm going to do. If this was like the one in the north, I would have started with 200. But in this case, I'm going to, because I started here, I'm just going to select the 600. And in here, I'm just going to call it test 2. And if I have done any changes, maybe I will add a justification. Or in this case, I might just have no PUMA change since 2010, but it's not necessary in this case. But if I choose, I will add that and I will say OK. This is how easy it is to create PUMAs. And if I choose to delete a PUMA, in this case, I can do boundary change just to, I did this so I can activate the info here. So if I want to go to the first one or the second one, I just click on it to highlight it. I can zoom to it to display it, just to confirm that this is the right selection. And I click in here to delete area features. And I'm going to say OK. Until the moment I worked on all of this and I did not save. If I select here and I want to undo my last action, since I didn't save, I'm going to click undo. And this will maintain my PUMA in here. If I click save, I'm not going to be able to do undo. I'm going to just go ahead and do delete here. And I'm going to click save to save my work. Before I move next, do we have any questions? I'm going to go to this import working file tool. Choose an option. I'm going to choose a shape.
Mohammed, there is one.
Yes.
It says, as you are adding counties or tracts together, does the PUMA population show as you are selecting so you can see when/if you cross the 100K mark?
Yes. Yes. And thank you for the question. I should have said that. So if I click here, just so you can see, this PUMA that I just created, it has a population of 190,134. If I'm creating a new one, new entity, and I select a county, it will populate the population here for me. If I select a tract and I hold the shift key and I add into this, automatically it will update the population for me. I'm holding the Make sense?
Yes, to me it does. Does that
Right.
answer you, Tim?
So as I'm adding faces or counties, it's gonna calculate and add the population together. And as you see here, it just took a little bit extra time because I was holding the shift key and the selected ones, and it just added the whole county here. So in this case, I can just go here and select those. And I don't mean to drive it crazy, but that's how you do it, and you will be able to see the population count in here. So I'm just gonna go, and there is another way to do unselect. It's either you're gonna unselect everything from here, deselect features, or you can do the same thing if from here, deselect features if you don't you wanna clear the selection. We can continue like this. I recommend that you go like this from west to east and then east to west to maintain that, so you can keep track of the numbering and with the names. And if you had worked with somebody else and you chose to share the work with others, and every party had done part of the state, they can export shape files. And we can talk about that in a moment, but I'm gonna say import a PUMA shapefile, and I'm gonna click OK. Do you want that to append to the existing file? You click yes to append, no to start over. Since I know that I started this and halfway I stopped because Josh has sent me his work for this part of the state, I'm going to say no. And I'm going to say okay, because all of these warnings just telling me you're not going to be able to cancel this work. I'm going to say okay. This will clear everything in the shapefile and is going to open a window explorer for you to navigate where you have saved the shapefile, or where I have saved the shapefile that I received from Josh at this point. So I received this part 1. I'm going to click open. And it's asked me to map it. And what it means by this is like, where is the what's the name that you have in this shapefiles for the state? I have a state fib. For the PUMA code, I have a PUMA C. And for the name, I have the PUMA name. And I will say OK here. As you see, the existing PUMA or PUMAs that I had created has been cleared off, and this will bring only the shapefile that I'm bringing here. If you want to append, you could have selected yes, or it can append. And in that case, if there is overlapping, anything new that is coming in, you're not going to be able to bring it in, because it's going to look at it as a duplicate, especially if it has the same number and the same name. Or if it's overlapping, it's not going to bring it in, because it's going to give you the issue that there is overlapping in what you're doing. And all of this is built in, so it can make it easier for everybody. Josh knows what he's doing, and all of what he has done is successfully came in, and it's I can review it now. So I'm going to click OK. And all of these highlighted here and they look a little bit darker blue is the PUMAs that's been created by Josh. The modify area feature tool didn't populate any of this because I need to refresh it. Please remember that. So I'm just going to activate it again. And it just opened into my other screen. And it displays the PUMAs that Josh created. I can go ahead and it's like, if I finished all of these and I want to export to Josh, for example, after I reviewed them, and if I like what he has done, I can automatically export, and GUPS without having to run the criteria review is going to allow me to do that. So I'm going to export layer to shapefile or TEF. And here it gives you the options to export the shapefile that is been imported. So you can, the current PUMA shapefile, the current PUMA comma delimited TEF, and you can use either one of those. I don't think that there is a use for any of the outside users to use the pipe delimited TEF. And that's why we have it here for census use only. And there is a good reason why we have it here for our processing purposes, so we don't miss or lose anything. So please, there is no reason to bring a file or export a file as a pipe delimited. So you can, current PUMA shapefile, you can say OK and export. So if you're working with a planning department somewhere that they had or multiple counties that they're working together, and somebody's responsible, or a regional geographer responsible for this area, this is the way that they can help you to export a shapefile. And for their part, if you tell them to do these counties, assign it to them, and they can send them back to you this way. So export has completed. Do you want to find where it is? If you remember, this is the GUPS folder, and it's in my Edge drive. We talked about this earlier, and the GUPS data, GUPS 20, and this is the output. If I click yes, it's going to open a window explorer to tell me where that file is, or shapefile that I just exported. I'm going to go ahead and continue because I have a good day today, and I received Mike's finished his part of the shapefile, so I'm gonna import PUMA shapefile here. I'm gonna say okay. Do you want to append existing file? Click yes to append, no to not. I'm gonna say yes because I want to have Mike's to be appended to this shapefile. I know that he worked in certain counties, so I'm gonna click open. And the same thing, I'm just gonna do state fib, PUMA code, PUMA name, and click OK.
Mohammed, I'm just going to say this one. There was a question about TEF and if it equaled a text file. And Michael did answer it in chat. Tabular equivalency file.
It is a comma delimited text file or a tabular equivalency file, yes.
And there was another question that I had, and I'm sure many others have. Can you change the color of the layers as you see fit?
You can. The symbology is like we selected this symbology just to differentiate between the layers to make it easier and to save a lot of time, because as you all know, it takes a lot of time to just spend to fix the symbology. Yes, you can change the symbology as you feel like it fits for you, and you can save it, and or you can create your symbology and save the symbology, export the file of each of the layers, and when you come back to the project or you want to share that symbology with others, you can share those exported files with a symbology on them. But I'm not gonna cover that, but yes, you can. It's we are not the way that this, to make it easier for everybody to eliminate any of the issues and any of the changes, because we're creating new PUMAs, you can add area and you can remove. So for example, let's take a look at this here. Let's try this. So we have this PUMA that I received from Mike, and Mike is a good worker, but Mike is new in the project, and I know the area better than him, let's say, which he, use a geography. Okay, I'm gonna click to use my target area. If you feel like there is any of those glitches because of what we're doing, just to play with the change action to reactivate the tools. So I'm gonna click my target area. Let me select this one, for example, for now. And forgive me for why I'm not sure why it didn't select the ones that I just downloaded, but maybe because I didn't save. Let me save. Oh, I know why. Okay, I'm gonna say yes. If you recall, I almost like had the trouble myself now, or caused the trouble for myself. If you remember, I told you earlier that the modify area feature tool needs to be updated and reactivated. In here, I have only the files that I received from Josh. I did not update this after I put in the files from Mike. So again, it's very easy sometimes to forget, especially when we are online. And this, after a couple of days ago, I had an issue with, like, we have internet connectivity issues while we were presenting. So I wasn't sure what was going on. But now, as you see, I brought in all of the shapefile, all of the PUMAs, and reactivated my modify area feature tool. So now it should be able easily to recognize, and here it is, to recognize the changes. So you're not the only one who might be shocked. It's like, what happened here? So instead of like add and remove, So what you'll be able to do is like you select your target, and if you want to add area to it, you can select feature and you can add this for it, because this is, you're removing this face from this PUMA to add it into this PUMA. Does that make sense? So you're, instead of removing, you're doing boundary change, and you're adding to the area or removing from an area. And there is no need to remove it like this. Again, the purpose of this is because we have the pumas, they are wall to wall, they cover the whole state, and we want to make sure that the workflow that you're working with is very smooth and it's not going to cause problem. Because by removing, let's say that I wanted to remove this and I didn't have it the way it is, this might be in the end more an added work for you, because that face will not be assigned to a PUMA. This is just an example that somebody might forget. So in order for you to remove an area, you do a boundary change, you select your target area and you add to it. And if you want to select this area, you select this PUMA and you can select feature from here, and you can select any of those faces to add them in here if you want to. Hopefully this answered your question.
Can you run a process to compare 2010 boundary to create a new process? Say you've been told not to change much.
Perfect. That's a really good question. So again, you can, it's like we decided not to bring, you cannot do the process in here. You can do it somewhere else. It's like you can use ArcMap to run the process and bring the shape file that you want. But we don't have that here. Also,
Mohammed, I mean, what we do have is you can pull up the 2010 boundaries.
Exactly.
Right, so you can pull them up and do the comparison, like a visual comparison. But I think what Mohammed's saying is that we don't have a process to just run that on the fly and do a spatial comparison and show all the gaps and slivers and small differences. So there's a visual comparison. Any geographic operations that you want to do, a spatial operation to clip and, you know, buffer it out and figure out exactly, you can do all that geographic, but in terms of within GUPS, we don't have a way of just pulling in the 2010 boundary and immediately transferring to a new project. You're gonna have to do a little visual comparison.
Like, this is one way around it. Like, yes, you can. The other suggestion that I might have is, like, as you see, I'm bringing here shape files that I received from Josh, Michael. There is an area here that I received it from Barbara, for example, that I'm going to bring it here. You can bring a shapefile that you can export the shapefile from the PUMA's 2010 here, and you can bring it here, and you can work with it as your PUMA file. And you can do your edits if you know exactly where your changes are, and it should work good, but I don't, it's like there is going to be some gaps that you might have to fix, or some holes. And what I mean by it is, like, it might not overlap 100%. So you might have to work around, like, faces. You might have plenty of faces that are not assigned to a PUMA, if that makes sense, because the faces has changed boundaries. Like, if you did work with PSAP, the PSAP is like updating census tracts boundaries and block groups. If the census tract boundary has changed or the county boundaries has changed, that shapefile that you're going to bring in, it's not going to be recognized and overlapped correctly. So you might have to do those edits in here. If you think that this is going to save your time, that's one way to do it. The other way is to do what I was doing, which is really easy. It shouldn't take too much. Let me download it, try to bring this file in, and we can do more of this kind of discussion. But yes, there is ways to work around it. Make sure you use the shape files from here to export them and do the differences, because again, you need the county boundaries, the new county boundaries, you need the tract boundaries, and you need to compare those together. Plus, like, you don't, it's like to do comparison with what? With, do you have a shapefile that you have already? Because now I'm not using, I don't have a 2020 that I'm using here, boundaries. That's another thing to think about. Sorry. So I have a shapefile that Barbara gave me. So I'm going to click OK. Do you want to append? I'm going to say yes, append. And I'm going to bring this third file and then say OK and open. And the same thing. State fib, PUMA code, and name. I'm going to say OK. And this can be done like if multiple of you working in the same office, different locations, they can do their own areas. And the final submission can be, or whoever the person is going to submit the census can append everything together and send it and after and review it. So this is successfully imported. So I'm going to say OK. So now I very much have the whole state covered with different pumas. I see that from the colors that I have something wrong above maximum maybe population, some changes that I need to do. I'm gonna click save to save my work. I need to remember that my modify area feature tool have only Mike's and Josh's submissions, and it's not updated, so I need to update that, and I'm glad I remembered that. So everything is in here. So I saved my work, and it's nothing wrong with saving, with making sure that your work is saved so you don't lose anything. The next tool to use is the PUMA criteria review. I'm gonna run this, and it's gonna go through all of the PUMAs. It's gonna check for anything wrong. It's gonna display a list with all of these. So it's telling me here that this PUMA has 80,693 and it's under the population. So I'm gonna try to fix this. And I'm looking at this, it's like 01301 and this is 01302. I worked in PSAP a lot and I feel like these are maybe split from each other. And with reviewing the criteria and based on the history of the area, I feel like maybe I need to bring these together and create one PUMA because there is projections that I'm gonna lose more population. So before I do this, and just to confirm, I need to check what's the population of this PUMA. So in here it's telling me that it has 102,000, 120, almost 1,000. So I'm gonna keep this area or the 1302, and I'm gonna change boundary as my action. I'm gonna click the select tool. All of this PUMA that I'm trying to append in here is created by faces or tracks in this case. I'm holding the shift key while I'm doing my selection just so I can select everything. So after I have selected everything, I'm just gonna click add. And after I added this, I'm gonna click save. And I'm gonna say yes. And before I forget, I'm just gonna go back to this 1302. And this is another thing. The list here is listed by the PUMA code number, and it's easy, so it's easy to find. And what I'm gonna do, because I did append those together, and this was east, this is west. I'm just gonna go and change the name. I'm gonna do something like this and say west. And I'm gonna click OK. When you're gonna look at the naming and the coding, and you will see that there is certain symbols that you can use and what you cannot use, and some of them are, and most of them are listed here, and this is where it can check to make you just correct any mistakes or anything that you might type without knowing about it. So I'm just gonna say and west and say OK, and that one was updated correctly. And I'm gonna say save. And yes. And here is telling me that this PUMA has 99,000. And again, I know the area very well in here, let's say, and I need to do a boundary change to just bring this up a little bit. I know that these are somehow historically together. I'm gonna try to select those two. The target layer has not been okay. I'm gonna select my target PUMA, which is the one under threshold. And I'm gonna select my features. It's like I can select only this face, but if I choose to select two faces, I can do that to make this over 100. It's up what you like to do and what makes sense. So I'm gonna add these. And I'm gonna click save again because I'm trying to save my work. Say yes. This one here is telling me that the population here is 211,000. This one I did not touch. When I look at the reference layers, the 2010 boundaries, it seems like it has not been changed. And I like to maintain this. In this case, I'm just gonna say, allow me to justify. Please notice like what's the difference here as well. This one was under a threshold and it doesn't allow me to justify. But because these are over a threshold or over 200,000, it's telling me to justify. So I'm maintaining this for historical boundaries. It's telling me the same thing here for this one. This one is 223,000. If I want to maintain it, I can just add a justification, or you can add other. So if you want to, if there is another reason why you're maintaining this, maybe you can say, something like it's losing population in the future. In here, I can do the same thing in here. It's like you can change boundaries. If this is what you want, you can include other things, or you can maintain it if it's not changed. Gonna maintain it. Gonna go to the next one. This one is telling me it's over. It's like, again, you can, I'm gonna take this one as my target, for example. And for this one, I'm gonna do some other work. I'm going to create a new entity. And this is good to notice that in this case, I'm going to select a bunch of those faces. And this is very close what I wanted. And hopefully the other half will have over 100,000. And I'm going to add a new entity, new. I'm going to call this, since it's 600, I'm going to go back here and say 600 and maybe 01. And I'm going to call this Baldwin North. And I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to click Save. And yes. While I'm doing those changes, if you noticed, I didn't have to reactivate the Modify Area feature tool, because everything is getting listed in here, and there is no reason for me to update it again. But when I bring the shape files, I just have to do that, so I can have everything listed here. So since I change this to 02 60001, and I gave it a new code, I'm just going to go back here. And as you see, when I selected this, it's selected here in the info. I'm going to go back here. And based on the numbering that I used, I'm going to make this 2 because this is a new. And this is south maybe. And click OK. I think I did enough work with this part, so I just want to make sure that I update, and just so I can verify what has left. I'm going to click Save here, just to save everything I have done so far. And yes. And in here, I'm going to click Save Justifications. And it's telling me that 3 features updated. The 3 features that updated here, it was the ones that I gave justifications for. But everything else was as special changes. So I'm going to run the criteria review again. And as you see, my list is shrinking, or it's smaller. And it's almost done. So again, I'm going to click into my selection, and in this one, I'm just going to say, I'm going to maintain this boundary because it's not too much over 200. And the other thing that you will notice, and there is not much you can do with the reservations. If the reservation is split between multiple tracks, we just want to make sure that you review those. And you will see in the criteria what needs to happen and verify those. But in here, we give you, it's flexible. We need you to be just able to verify them if you can, and whenever it's possible, to include the reservation areas or the American Indian areas within the same PUMA when possible. But if they are not contiguous and they are within a distance and you cannot work around it, you can just go ahead and add a justification. And as you see here, there is more justifications. So in this one, I'm going to say that it's non-contiguous. And every time I click on one, it's going to give me what is happening with the other one. And there is another part here that is included. I'm going to say it's non-contiguous. But if there is any reason that I would like to change the boundary, I would do the change boundary to include the other area when it's possible to include it in one PUMA. I just wanted to identify this. But now I can just go ahead and provide justifications for these. Close. All right. So this is another example of what one of the new criteria that you will see. So in here, although 2010 had the boundaries, I still have this when I run the criteria, just in case we do something new, and this is where you need to change these. So if I selected faces that are under 10,000 people, and it's like the selection didn't cover the whole county, you will see this as one of the criteria that can pop up, and you have to justify it, or most of the time, or 99% of the time, you have to fix it, unless that this is like from 2010, I'm assuming, and you will see that in the criteria again. So I'm gonna select this PUMA. So it tells me if these faces are under. If I'm gonna fix this, I'm just gonna go and select again the PUMA that I'm gonna add it to, which belongs to this county. And since I decide to fix it, I'm gonna go and select my faces that start causing the problem, and I'm gonna add them. I'm gonna click save. Yes, and save justifications. And okay. Now that I saved my work and I have finished the review of my criteria review, just for the last check, I'm gonna try to run it again. And it tells me that all the features passed. If I go to export this, export to zip, if I'm gonna share it with Josh so he can review my work before I send it to the census, I will export to share with another participant. In this case, because I took too much of your time today, I'm gonna click export to census. And it's the same way, in the same place, it's gonna export the file. And you can copy it and share it with another participant. And in this case, you can upload the folder, you can save the folder that you submit to the census, you can save it in another directory to have a copy of it. And as you see here, just for quality control check, you need to check the criteria review, and you will say okay, and just gonna run it again before it exports, just to make sure that everything is all right. If something not justified or there's something wrong, it will open the criteria review again for you, and you will be able to enter the information that is required from you, or to fix the errors if there is any. So in this case, I'm submitting to the census, so I get this form. If I'm the primary PUMA contact, I will click this small box here. Just remember that. You enter all of your information, your email address. I'm just having this as a test so I can make sure that this file is not processed by the census, because it's for testing. So I'm gonna click OK to export. You need to be patient when you download the project or when you export, because depending on the size of your project, depending on the size of the files, the shape files, and it's going to take a little bit longer to download the project and make sure everything is available for you. Again, the pop-up window, it's taking me to where the file, the exported zip to the census is, where it's going to be located. And it gives it a specific name with the PUMA 20, my state, and it says return here. I'm gonna say yes to take me to that folder. So I have this folder here. I can, as we said, you can copy this somewhere else and upload it then to the census, or you can navigate to this location and upload to the census. If I'm gonna upload that to the census, I'm gonna go here and try to log in again to Swim, just so I can present this again. And I'm gonna log in. And it's gonna say start a new upload. You're gonna select your program, say next. My state is Alabama, and say next, and add file. And it's gonna navigate to the location where, or I navigate to the location where it is, where the file is located. It's the output folder. Again, you need to navigate to this. It just happened that I uploaded a file earlier, so this was mapped for me. But you need to know where your cups folder is. And it's like the other way to do this is by keeping the Window Explorer open so you can navigate to those folders. So I selected the file and I'm going to click open. And again, depending on your internet connectivity, how good it is, if you are not presenting the way I'm presenting at this point, it's like all of that and the condition of the servers, this will upload easily. I'm gonna go previous here just so so you can see earlier today I uploaded some files. It's not showing here, but I have completed some files. I had a problem before, and it shouldn't be a problem, but I think the problem in this case, it is because there is something going on with my connectivity at this point, or it's because I am presenting. But it definitely should work with no issues for you. And if you have any issues, please let me know, and I will find a way around it to make sure that it's active. Any questions? I think if I restart it, maybe it will work. Any questions so far?
I don't see any in the chat, Mohammed, and I don't see any hands raised.